Color can add interest and warmth to a sculpture. I designed this form for Middlesex University in London. It derives from an underlying spherical form that's compressed vertically into a lenticular shape. While my main focus is usually the symmetric geometric patterns, I find that adding color can engage viewers so they spend more time looking and thinking about the structure. So first look at an uncolored wood version of the design. This is a 4-foot prototype hanging in the atrium at Packer Collegiate Institute in New York. I worked with a group of students there who assembled the 6D laser-cut bolted birch plywood parts using cable ties. Now, color the sculpture for a warmer effect. This smaller model sits on a display stand, so it's hard to compare directly, but I find it has a more organic feel. Like a mushroom, a pumpkin, a brain, who knows, but the color definitely adds something to it. Here's a second example, also lenticular in overall form, and also derived by scaling from a spherical shape with a 5-fold axis vertical. Here there are 30 planar components. Again, I used a light-colored wood so the darkened laser-cut edges stand out. Part of what I like about these designs is that sometimes my attention focuses on a detailed view of individual part shapes and how they connect, and sometimes my mind switches to the big picture view of seeing the entire sculpture as a whole. But now, color it for a very different effect. Here the inside is orange and the outside is yellow. This makes it much easier to understand both the forest and the trees. Your eye sees more easily how it works. You might also notice I switched to white cable ties, which work much better with these colors than the previous black ones. I think the result, called D-flat, is pretty cool. Here's a third example. I call it Frabjik. It derives from another sculpture of mine called Frabjis, but this is much easier to assemble, so it's a good pedagogical introduction to this family of works. The real thing in wood is quite elegant. Part of what I like about this technique is the combination of 1, 2, and 3 dimensions. The edges are one-dimensional curves, which outline the two-dimensional components, which make up the three-dimensional sculpture. But now, dye it Prussian blue for a much richer feel. It's definitely a black tie affair. I use a stain, not paint, so the grain of the wood is still visible, adding a texture to its organic feel. And leaving the tails of the outer cable ties unclipped adds another layer of interest to the sculpture. Now we'll do the compression trick once again to morph the form of Frabjik into an oblate spheroid. This time we compress along a 3-fold axis, but again the underlying spherical design is transformed into an ellipsoid whose axes are in the ratios 1 to 2 to 2. When making it in wood, there are 6 different shapes of pieces. The scaling transformation for each piece depends on the orientation of the part relative to the vertical axis of compression. Like D-flat, I colored this one orange on the inside and yellow on the outside. Again, using 2 colors makes the structure more lucid. The rear surface is clearly distinct from the front. The 5-way openings are suggestive of flower petals, so I call it oxalis. I'll end this video with a more complex design. Each of these 60 identical components connects a 3-fold vertex to a 5-fold vertex, and they weave through each other in a fascinating manner, making it much more of a puzzle to construct. And you might notice little tabs, largely hidden, on the inside, which make it structurally rigid. The wood form is rather intricate, and you might study it for a while before fully understanding it. My criterion is that you don't understand a sculpture unless you can shut your eyes and visualize it. And you don't really understand it until you can go to a desert island and reproduce your own model of it. So, coloring it blue on the outside and green on the inside may help people understand it. Plus it gives it a more biological flavor. This was a commission for the Maritime Explorium in Port Jefferson, New York, where it's hanging among science and nature exhibits. I wanted a very organic feel, so again I left the outer cable ties unclipped, like cilia on a cell. It evokes an undersea aesthetic, so I call it anemone. For more information on my sculpture, see my georgehart.com website.